Hello guys, today I'm looking at Resident Evil 6. So it was funny actually, I was reorganizing my cabinet of all my games from, last gen, and I was looking at some of the games in the back that I kind of put as the crap games that I, don't want exactly to play, but I also don't want to throw away either. That I want to keep them for the novelty of them existing, even though I don't actually want to see that I own them. And, I was sorting through it and I realized, oh shoot, Resident Evil 6. And it just kind of dawned on me that I had played 7 and 8, and 6 is something that I, again, had started but never beaten because it's just really bad. However, I forgot how bad it was and what exactly is wrong with it, because it's not technically a bad game. I mean, this is a AAA studio which has put out banger after banger for like over a decade, and one of the greatest games of all time, Resident Evil 4. And so it's like, what happened here, And so going back into Resi 6, I was immediately reminded and shocked and shown why I disliked this game so much. First of all, the zombies have guns now, and they did have guns in 5, but it's like those zombies already had guns that were infected, and they could be very inaccurate and very rare. In this one, the C virus has taken over, and now the zombies can just be kind of like mind controlled like normal people, and they aim at you and shoot their guns, and it's like just fighting average normal guys. So that already there, it doesn't feel like Resident Evil. The other big thing is the fact that, all the characters can do this whole jumping thing. Resident Evil, it's used to being like a horror start, and then it slowly ramps up into an action movie. Here, they're just in the action sequence part. People are jumping on the ground, flipping, switches, reloading, and it's just right out the gate. It is like an action movie. And it feels very, very fast-paced and high-paced and doesn't really fit any of the characters, except for Jake Mueller. So, for those of you who've never played this, apparently Jake Mueller is Wesker's son. And honestly, he has a very good personality, an interesting story, and a background and everything. And how, just to see how his character actually develops and changes. And the other really cool thing is he's paired up with Sherry Birkin, who is also, a character in Resident Evil 2. And so these kind of team up in the future, and, or not the future, but, the near future in the series. And they kind of become this duo. And honestly, I really like their companionship and their chemistry and everything. It feels appropriate. And apparently, Jake is found in Edonia, or, Eastern Europe, wherever that could be. And so I guess, I don't know if Wesker had a child, there in that part of the world, and they just found him by happenstance. But again, a lot of the storytelling in 6 is very much all over the place. So it's like, you have this part in Estonia, or Edonia rather, sorry, where you have these characters, and then later in the campaign, all the characters end up in China, basically. And so this is kind of like the Chinese zombie Resident Evil, while we already had Africa and Spain. And so that's kind of the thing here. Something I just typically don't enjoy about this game is not only the movement or whatever, because it is super fast paced. And I guess just on that note, it's not that I dislike it, it's just that is not Resident Evil at all. I would be kind of fine if, only Jake played like this, because it suits his personality and his play style. He is supposed to be this pseudo superhuman guy who can move super fast, dive around, kick, punch. He's the only character where his default weapon is literally his fist. He doesn't even get a blade, because he can literally do Wesker's punching and kicking kind of combos. And so, I mean, it's a really smart way to recycle the Wesker moveset, despite him being gone from the story at this point. And the other thing that's also weird about these zombies is they just, after they're really bloody or whatever, and you kill them, they turn into these little ashes or whatever almost immediately, which again makes it feel I don't know, just really weird. Like you're trying to have this like gore mechanic, but then also be kind of like censor it almost with like how they just disappear, as if it's making it more of a gameplay thing. I don't know how to feel about it. But again, Jake himself, everything else in this game, I really dislike except for Jake. His campaign feels appropriate. It feels fast paced. It's kind of a short introduction to a character. It just does not feel like a mainline Resident Evil game, though. That's the only thing I have to say about it. I would have no problem if this was called Resident Evil Secret Stories or Resident Evil Revelations. Oh, sorry, that game already exists. Resident Evil. The Time of Evil, I don't know, like some kind of like side game like Raccoon City or something. I would really have no I really have no like issue or concern with any of it if it was just something like that. But this is a mainline title. This is 6. This is like, okay, well, this is what is going to happen to the main story and the characters and the mechanics from this point on. And this was kind of building off of 4 and 5. 1 to 3 was kind of the sort of set piece style game, while 4 and 5 were more over the shoulder, and so 6 was supposed to be a continuation of that. But they add a lot of weird, again, combat mechanics and a lot of QTEs, like a lot of them. And the whole tone of the game, it just feels schizophrenic and fast paced. And the thing is, each character only gets 5 levels each. So it's like designed to be this very fast paced action game that just feels, I don't know, like very weird overall. Like there's kind of a story, like the C virus shows up, you're not really sure why. I mean, you have to play all the campaigns to get it, but it just feels very out of the blue and for no reason. It's like, go here, do this, and just because. And again, it just feels so random and crazy. It just doesn't have that, that feeling of being a proper Resident Evil game. It just feels like a total spin-off, and I wish they just labeled it as such. Again, I really like Jake as a character. I like his outfit and his design. I like also the nice touch at the end where he's riding his motorcycle and he puts on Wesker's glasses. And I do think it really sets up a good kind of framework for, honestly, the next game of this series and the sequels. I also like how acrobatic he is and how he's kind of superhuman and taking on the harder BOWs in the campaign. Again, like Jake could be kind of like the Metal Gear Rising character for this franchise. I think if they diverted all the resource they gave to Chris and Leon and Ada and everyone else, and they just focused on making this a Jake game, I think it would have been a lot more successful and just well received in general. Because seeing Chris and Leon doing this whole sort of like jumping and diving and ducking, it's just not in their nature and not in their gameplay, and it just feels kind of wrong to see that. Again, the gameplay works pretty well. You kind of have mostly waves of enemies that come at you. Then you have certain areas where you have to take down a larger enemy, or you have to navigate through a little room. The puzzles in this game, you really don't have to think about them. Usually, they're just like resource collecting things. Or like navigational puzzles. So most of the game is just when I realized it was really missing any puzzles of any significance, that's when it really drove home that this really is not Resident Evil again. Also, I don't know, the environments, the campaign, everything just feels so uninspired. And again, you don't have any really good antagonists. I mean, there's Simmons in this game and the Ustananov or whatever it's called, but I don't know, it just feels so like rushed and haphazard, and it doesn't feel like a finished product. Also, they try to have, places where you do have to do stealth and you have to sneak around, otherwise you're going to, get killed. And they have these, quote unquote scary sections, but it's really not that hard. It doesn't last that long. And it's like the game will not sit and take a moment to really absorb any kind of atmosphere. It just wants to be an action game, which is different from what Resident Evil is. You're supposed to work within the confines of being weak, and then you turns into an action game from the scope of arsenal that you acquire. And yeah, and then they're just stupid things like, I don't know, you're fighting this giant, slow moving nemesis like creature, and by the end of the game, you're on this high speed like railway thing, and it's kind of leaving, you know, out of the exploding building after you throw that guy into the lava, and somehow he's still alive and comes after you. And there's just like a level of disbelief I can't like buy, where this slow lumbering thing is now on like your accelerating like platform of doom that's like going at the speed of sound almost. Yeah, there's just no real distinct vibe, and the fact that it's also, you know, worldwide, that you're in like Eastern Europe and then China, it never sits still long enough to be a certain like theme or vibe or thing. You know, when you're fighting the zombies in Hong Kong or wherever, whichever city you're in China, it'd be nice if it was able to like, I don't know, it felt like Raccoon City, like there was nothing super distinct or different about that area. And again, I don't know, just nothing about this game felt inspirational or different. It was just like, hey, let's turn our series into an action sequence. And it's really weird because I like a lot of the things here make sense from like a product perspective. Like you told me, oh, we're going to do all this cool stuff and go to China. It's going to be like this worldwide thing. Like it sounds good on paper, I guess. But in execution, it has no identity. It has no soul. And it's definitely not Resident Evil. You know, playing as Jake was the best part of this game, frankly, because it felt different enough to suit him and his new kind of perspective. But everything else just felt weird. And playing as Leon, especially in the opening sequence where you like have like a scary bit to begin with and it just ends, it's just, the whole thing is just very weird. The guns, of course, are fine in this game. You know, you have the bolt action sniper, pistol, submachine gun, shotgun, you know, grenade launcher, etc. So there's nothing super, you know, super interesting or new, except the fact that Jake can fight with his hands, which is pretty neat. But on the whole, I'm not super impressed by this game, and I know this is one of the most divisive slash unloved games in the Resident Evil series. And it wouldn't be a problem, again, if it was a mainline title, but it is. And so I'm kind of left with the impression of this game, I really don't know how to feel about it. It's very much okay, and when I really do think about it, like it incorporated a lot of its upgrade system for Resident Evil Revelations. So every time you beat a multi or single player game, you get this loadout feature, and you can buy better upgrades for your guns and items. And it's basically the exact same thing from Revelations, which was like a multiplayer focused mercenary mode. I don't know, like there's nothing. I mean, the enemy design is kind of different and significant. They have these 4 eyes or whatever. You know, I guess you defeat the T-virus, but again, it's so short and so haphazard and so all over the place. It just doesn't work, and I wish it did, but I don't know, that's where we are now. Anyway, I can't really recommend this. It's a weird game. Maybe you should at least try it just to understand why people don't like it. I mean, on the surface, it looks good, it looks cool, but they kind of really... It makes sense how they ran into a bunch of creative walls kind of haphazardly, were moving around with all these crazy ideas without a central theme, and then they went back to basics with Resident Evil 7 and 8. And, you know, I really hope that they make more games after this, but I don't want another game like this. Or what would be better if they made a Jake-only game that was basically with this kind of gameplay? I would actually be totally fine with that. You know, hopefully, of course, they could fix the story, make it more interesting. You know, again, just focus on Jake and Edonia or China or one of these places. But otherwise, I'm just not very impressed by the whole experience. That's pretty much it, guys. See ya.